Once upon a time, two friends joined forces to bring you the best in horror entertainment. Brian from the north, Tim from the south, each bringing their own unique perspective to the horror community. Movie reviews, Blu-ray releases, beer pairings, games, and more. Welcome to your new home for horror. This is Civil Gore.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Civil Gore Podcast. I'm your host, Tim.
And this is Brian. And reluctantly, even though we gave such a bad Yelp review, we decided to give the Avenue. They invited us back and they said, we'll make it much better this time. Just come on back. We'll give you a discount on the rooms.
Yeah.
So, they said they might even give us a lakeside view, if you get what I'm saying, So.
Yeah, we're going to check back into the Abaddon Hotel. This time we are covering the latter part of the Hell House series. So far, hoping there's more. Hell House
Yes.
LLC 3, Lake of Fire is our first up, and we'll also be covering Hell House LLC Origins,
Yes.
which is a not part 4, it's Origins,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Carmichael Manor, which kind of branches the franchise out into kind of a little bit of a different direction, although there's a lot of ties back to the first movie. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the first part that we did last week. Again, a little bit of a shorter episode. This was probably going to be a little bit on the shorter side as well, but I kind of I kind of like, Brian and I were talking before we started recording. Sometimes I kind of like the little shorter podcast episodes that you could kind of knock out. And it also saves my voice when we're recording 2 episodes back to back.
Yes, yeah. Well, yeah, and like, you know what? I have to say that it's nice with these to do it this way. We did it kind of like because basically between Tim's crazy work schedule and my travel schedule, I was like I basically had to sit down one day and said I got to figure out a way we can get this summer Slaycation in where we're not like postponing episode after episode after episode.
Which is
And
what
when I
happened
looked
last
at
year.
yeah, and last year was like we were almost into Christmas. It was to the holidays. I mean, this time at least I guarantee pretty much unless something catastrophic happens, we guaranteed like 2 weeks before the official whatever the solstice they call it, whatever the ends, when summer actually officially ends in September like 21st or whatever. Um and then we go right kind of, which is kind of cool though in a way because you get the Slaycation and kind of go almost right into the horror challenge, which is fun, which is always a fun time. Which I can't believe already I'm saying that. I felt like I just created the last one and I'm already doing this one.
This year has flown by.
But yeah, so I think it's so we basically have just been doing like parts 1 and 2 on the same day, which we rarely have ever done, like other than a dismemberment in a regular episode. But I kind of like this because also it kind of gives a nice cohesiveness to the whole franchise versus when we used to do them when we do them like a week apart already and you watch the next one. I mean, granted, it's easier with 4 to 6 movies in a franchise like that. Our last finale one is going to have to I don't think there's a way we can do all of those in one sitting. But I think I scheduled that to be broken up because that was the beauty of it. I critiqued this schedule, so it seems to work great. And we're 300th episodes being thrown in the middle of this and a dismemberment, two dismemberments technically in this schedule. But yeah, it'll be fun. But yeah, let's get right into of course Tim will do his masterful work of the housekeeping here with Hell House L3. I know, big list
names.
This one. Well, because this is like everybody that's been in the previous 2 films appear in this one.
And
then some,
So Hell House LLC 3, Lake of Fire, came out in 2019. Again, directed by Stephen Cognetti, who's done all the Hell House movies. Starring Gabriel Chitry as Russell Wynn, Elizabeth Vermillier as Vanessa Shepard, Sam Katzey as Jeff Stone, Theodore Belukos as Robert Lyons, Brian David Tracy as Andrew Tully, Bridget Abrams as Jane Maloney, Leo DeFriend as Gregory Sandvik, Jordan Kaplan as Max, Danny Bellini as Alex Taylor, Ryan Jennifer Jones as Sarah Havel, Gore Abrams as Paul, Jared Hacker as Tony, Joe Bandelli as Louis / Hell House Clown, Scott Ritchie as Harvey, Olivia Royden as Isabel, Adam Schneider as Mac, Joy Schatz as Molly, Jillian Gertz as Jessica, Dan Dobransky as Father Paulus, and Joe Waltz as news reporter. The Abaddon Hotel will once again be open to the public. Russell Wynn has taken his audience interactive show Insomnia into the abandoned hotel that is rumored to be haunted. And I loved that Stephen. I'm guessing here. I would love to talk to Stephen Cognetti and see if the criticisms of Hell House 2 are what caused him to go in the direction that he did with Hell House 3. Because you can see, whether it's intentional or not, you can see almost every mistake that was made in Hell House 2 attempt to be corrected in Hell
Mm.
House 3. Didn't get there 100%, in my
Mm.
opinion.
I
But
think the ending part, a little bit part of that ending is
yeah,
what did it for me, but
but
most of it was
overall,
great.
a vast improvement. It was like, when I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example of, I know, like American Idol or something. Like the singer comes out and just like she kills it. She's a great singer. She gets into the top 20, and then she comes out and she just like bombs. And then the coaches are like, okay, it was wrong song choice. You
Yeah.
were, you didn't, you weren't breathing correctly. You weren't doing this, and they give them all these tips, and then they come back and they kind of nail it again.
Yeah.
That's what I felt like. I felt like he took the criticisms of the first movie and he made a conscious effort to fix them, and, in large part he succeeded because
Yeah.
the story's better. You go back to the premise of the first one. It's essentially the same premise. We're kind of making in this case it's technically an interactive show, audience interactive
Yeah.
show, but it's more or less kind of a haunt. So it's kind of the same premise that he's trying to get this thing ready. You've got characters that are much more likable in this
Yeah.
one. You have actors that are definitely far better, or give far better performances in this one. And I think you toned back, not completely, and I think this is where Brian would probably agree that it still did not quite get to where it needed to be, but you
Yeah.
toned back the lore, at least the exposition of the lore a little bit. And I think you did a better job with the scares in this one. They're a little more subtle. Not always, again,
Yeah.
but vast improvement overall. I think you probably agree with me, Brian, that this one was a big step up.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, definitely kind of gained some back of the kind of rallied a little bit, like, and
Yeah.
it kind of went back to it kind of mixed, like, this was almost, I have a feeling like the feel of this one was what he wanted to get with 2 in a way, but,
Hmm.
like, just didn't execute it right. I think he got, like, that sequel syndrome where everything's gotta be bigger, giant, better, this to 5 times, but, like, but don't make it to the expense of the original. And this one, they kinda went with like you said, a similar premise to the first one. It went back to a little bit more simplicity. They upped stuff, but upped it in the right level way.
Yes.
They brought back that bearded guy that I liked, and they kind of like
The
went back,
bearded guy.
yeah, he's funny, that guy.
I liked him. I did like
I
him.
yeah, I just liked the premise more. I love those interactive theater things. I like that they were establishing like you're establishing a lore now. Like the lore is kind of established, they're kind of going through it, but like at the proper pace, and like then shoving it down your face in the last like 10 minutes, in the movie. So, this was as close to what I would have wanted from a sequel after the first one. It just like we'll get to that ending. It just missed towards the end. Like I think that was the one misstep. Like it's almost like that where you're like you make like you're piling a whole bunch of boxes together and trying to walk from your car into the house, and you're like everything's balanced so perfectly, and right as you're about to step in, you like trip a little and like the top box falls off.
Yeah.
That's the analogy I would use for this, where you almost made it all the way there with
Yeah.
what I kind of wanted, and then just like fumbled
But
a
it
little
wasn't a
bit like that.
complete disaster because you only lost the
No,
top
not at all.
box.
So you
You
lost the
only
box
lost.
on the floor, you put everything down, you pick it up, and so you
It's
had an
not a big
extra
deal. Yeah.
30 seconds of exerting yourself. Yeah, like it's like that. And you know, or like I guess a chef, if you put that one little extra bit of spice in that didn't belong.
Yeah.
But so, so overall this was cool. And I have to say, Gabriel Shitry that played, or Shitry, I don't know how to say his name, the guy that played Win, which
Hmm.
obviously that Win name had to be like intentional, I think, the Win, Steve Win kind of thing, that
Yeah.
name that everyone, that. But, I swear to God, if something happened to Jeremy Sisto, this guy could fill in for Jeremy Sisto's
Yes.
every one of his roles. He
Yeah.
sounded like him, and he kinda looked like him a little bit, like, in
Yeah.
sequences that, like, so, yeah, so I like the fact that, and I kind of liked where they started it in, it wasn't like, "We're gonna start from scratch and make this, this whole thing." Like, they already like, the bar was already set up, like, almost a lot of stuff was in place. Yeah, they're still doing stuff, but it wasn't, like, from scratch like the other one where they came in, because then that would've been exactly like it. So that's where he made, like, an improvement. Improvement from the second one. Like, he took what everyone liked about the first one, but didn't make it exactly the first one. which
Right.
everyone would have criticized as well. So I think that's why I kind of like this one. So immediately I was already invested in this one way more than I was in the second one from the initial thing by just hearing that like, okay, they're doing an interactive theater in a really creepy location. And those interactive theaters in New York, there was one that won I think some I think like something no more it was called or something. My brother had done it. He told me I had to go see it. I never got a chance. I'm so mad. I think it was like Sleep No More or something like that, where it's like you like wander around this big area that they set up in New York and there's levels and you don't always like end up in the same spot and people have different experience. Like you can end up interacting with some people that other people don't ever see, kind of like thing. It's like
Oh,
that
that
kind of
sounds
a thing.
cool.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure it's called Sleep No More. I have to look, and I think they change it every so often too. It's kind of like this thing I did in Vegas too. Actually, on my first trip in years when I went to Vegas, I did the Lost Distillery or whatever that is. Where in this one, they basically you just wander around there and you have to seek out the 5 rum tastings. But like you'll walk into a room and there's like this woman juggling plates, and you're like, but you have no map. You really don't know where you're going. And you'll walk into here and there's a girl in a bikini swinging upside down on a rope. It's like very bizarre. Like that's what I imagine like of these interactive theater things. And so I think that was like I like that premise automatically. And I'm like, okay, this is cool because it's not exactly a haunt like you said, but like close and it works for us.
Yeah, and again, you cared about the people because you want this to be a success. You
Yeah.
automatically are on their side. You know they're stressed. They're trying to do the best they can. And then I liked how the lady kept talking about how she felt comfortable in the environment, like they felt taken care of, and like they genuinely wanted to be there. I mean, those little touches like made you want, like you're kind of cheering them on, like, yeah, like I know you
Yeah.
guys can do it, you guys can pull this off, kind of thing. Even though it's ultimately probably going to end in disaster because this is
Yeah.
the Abaddon Hotel after all.
And the guy's got a little arrogance that like it's like that
Yeah,
likable arrogance to just it's the arrogance at least in the beginning of it. It gets to
yeah,
the point, but you get to that there's people with him and they go so over the top of it. But there's that one where you're like, I like his arrogance because I see why he's arrogant. He's really trying for something here. So it's like you
and
can
does it
forgive a little of this.
yeah, and doesn't that make for a more interesting character, right? Like,
Yeah, of
if
course. Yeah.
because they're not so cookie cutter, and that arrogance trait is something you can kind of hang your hat on. Like, I mean, I know this kind of sounds like bizarre to bring D&D into this, but I have a D&D session I do every couple of weeks. And people over time, as they've created these characters, they have like these little interesting little personality quirks that make the character seem more real. Like, we have
Yeah.
one guy that's he plays like this little thief, but he's like a little street urchin. He's like 12 years old. Like, his character is like 12 years old, and so he's like this little street urchin thief guy.
Is he Pip from
And he's
Horrified?
he's very much like Pip from Horrified, but
Yeah.
he plays him. He tries to role play him so that he makes decisions that this kid would make, right? And so in this D&D session, I play this giant half orc barbarian. I mean, this guy's just a bruiser. He's pure
Mm.
muscle. He kills everything. He hits hard. He's bloodlust. He's a fighter, and he plays this character, this little thief character, as if he's like simultaneously afraid of me, but also like very in awe, because he's this little 12-year-old street urchin kid, and I'm just like hulking barbarian.
Hmm.
And there's been so many fun interactions we've had playing the game where that kind of personality quirk of him, of being like this kind of like both scared and in awe of me at the same time, has made some like just really funny moments in the story of our campaign. And I say all that just to say that adding one little seemingly minor personality thing trait like that kind of likable arrogance can take a character from being just this flat two-dimensional character that you give no craps about whatsoever in a film to somebody that is interesting. And it
Yeah.
doesn't take a whole lot. You don't have to have a 50-page backstory on somebody to make them interesting. One little character quirk like that can make them both memorable and interesting.
Yeah, and he did a good job as playing that, like, throughout
Yeah.
the thing, like, he was good. He was basically everything that other guy wasn't in the last one, and then also, they they kind of again they did the exposition properly in this one. I feel like
Oh, they took
until
away the
just that
stupid
little
newsroom green
bit at
screen. They
the end.
lost all
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
they took that away, and they just had the things, and they had the discussions doing it, and they had little like, they had more some like interesting little conflicts that were captured on camera, like, and there were some starts they didn't tell you, and you had to kind of guess what was going on. He basically had the same pieces to his other two that he just rearranged them properly in this one. Whereas the second one, I feel like he had just like it's almost like how if you ever get like some kind of thing from IKEA, right? And you're
Yeah.
building it, and then there's like 5 or 6 extra pieces that what are in there, and then you realize, oh, they just put that in case.
Yeah.
It's like you don't have to use them all. Don't just screw in an extra screw that they gave you in case you lost the first screw. And I feel like that's what the second one was. But we're good.
Yeah.
Our analogy game is
I was about to say, this is like analogy filled. Yes.
I know,
Yes.
but it's it's like it's just true. It's like it's like you don't need to put everything if it's not needed.
Yeah.
Some things could just be extra. Leave them on the,
Part two felt like he felt like that was the last movie he was ever going to make, and he just
Yeah,
had to
it does.
throw the entire franchise into one movie,
Maybe
and
he
it just
thought
didn't
he
work.
was.
Maybe
It's,
we got to get Stephen Cognetti on here to talk
we
about it.
gotta have him
We got
on. I know.
burning questions to ask him
I
about
know.
this
Gotta
series.
find out.
But yeah. So yeah, I thought this one was like you said, it didn't completely work. It's up until the end. I think the end again, we get back to that whole, I
That
guess,
guy,
what
he's the
the
curse.
guy, like the main villain of this, the quote
Yeah.
unquote main villain of this whole thing. Like I don't like it. It just, it's too much. It's too in your
And the
face.
effects were like he tried to have this big effect scene, and it just didn't work right.
It
And it
didn't
looked
work right.
silly. It looked silly, is what it did. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, you're almost there. What happened? Why?
Yeah. It was
But
very, like, again, it was those cringe parts of part two, like, snuck into the ending of this. And
yeah,
I remember vividly. That's the one thing I did remember about Hell House 3 is not liking the ending. I do
yes, yeah,
remember that. And I think that's why I got it conflated in my mind as like this being the quote unquote bad one,
yeah,
when the ending was the only bad part of this movie. I thought the
right.
rest of the movie is really solid.
Yeah,
It's good.
yeah, and so the ending, as poor as it was received by, it seems like a lot of like us, and I've seen online again people complaining about that ending, specifically
Yeah.
Shudder. I saw people go like, "Oh my god, that was so," but overall, this one it didn't ruin the movie. In the second one, the ending was just so bad on our already kind of mediocre thing.
Yeah.
So it's like the last thing you wanted was a poor ending. Like it didn't even really like you ever go see a movie and most of the movie is not great, but it ends so well that you leave with like a maybe it wasn't
Yeah.
so bad, kind of thing. This one, it's like it just went. It wasn't good, and then it went downhill. The third one was so good at I think 97% of the film.
Yeah.
3% that ending was a little awkward, and they kind of actually, honestly, and what they did is that little tag after the credits kind of saved it a little for me because I thought that was just to me that's always a creepy like thing. And spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it yet, I
Yeah.
doubt you'd be listening to this episode. But the whole fact of where like for some reason it always creeps me out when they're like, yeah, you're dead, you can't leave here, you're stuck here,
Yeah. Oh,
kind of thing.
it almost gave me claustrophobia. Like
It
when
did, didn't it? It's the same way.
I felt
Like
like
that
a
was
little bit of like a panic attack. Like we can't
I
get
say,
out
oh
of
my
this.
God, I swear to God, that was the same kind of thing because you're just like, oh my God, could you imagine that? It's like a nightmare. It's like those dreams people have, your nightmares where you're like dead and you're walking around, but you're not really dead, kind of thing. And like, and I thought though, and I thought was even like the chef's kiss on that thing was that like they stayed in character to the very end when they're all just looking like, well, let's go have a drink, like we got
Yeah.
a whole bar kind of thing. And I'm like, you know what? That's great. If the series would have ended on that note as a trilogy, I think it still would hold it in such high regard. The fact that we're going to get to the next one, which kind of invigorated the whole franchise and gone a different direction, we'll get to in a second. Kind of like takes that part away, but still, overall, that first three I kind of keep as like its own little trilogy thing. And like you
Yeah.
said, I kind of hope they do this Carmichael. Like the next couple of ones are going to be trilogies. I think it will, based on the title of the next
I
one.
would hope so. Yeah.
So
Yeah. I think yeah, I think you look back, Hell House LLC met my expectations of what I remembered. Hell
yeah,
House LLC 2 was far below the expectations of what I remembered. And then I think Hell House LL3 has its stock rose quite a bit because I
Yes.
was completely misremembering the quality of this movie.
Yeah.
In my mind, I was thinking this one was going to be garbage, and I was pleasantly surprised when I watched it back. And
Yeah.
I'm like, this one's not bad at all.
I know, and and the whole time I was watching it, I'm like, "Why did I think this was the bad one?"
I know.
Like, I knew
I
one
don't
of
get it.
I knew obviously the first one was not it, but I knew some 2 or 3, one of them is bad, and for some reason I always remember 3 as being bad
Me too.
and
It's
not
so
2.
weird. It's weird that
I got
both
them
of
like,
us
mixed up.
misremembered it. Yeah.
Yeah, it must have had some kinda, like, Tim Della effect. I don't
I don't know. It's so
but,
weird.
yeah, it's really weird, but
Well,
anyway,
we got to get to the next one because I'm
yes,
so excited to
I
talk
know.
about this one because
Even though we featured this as an episode, but now
we
it's like,
did.
now that we watched it in a row, it's kinda fun to, like,
It
go
is
back to
because
this.
go back, I don't remember the episode number off the top of my head, but we did a standalone episode on this one when it came out, and I did not go back and rewatch the first three when this one came out.
I did
So
not either,
a
yeah.
lot of the lore I think was lost on me. I mean,
Yeah.
I was doing well just to remember the clowns,
Yeah.
but going back and watching this as a part of the entire franchise gave me a whole new appreciation. And I actually watched it twice. I watched it. I watched. This is the third time I've watched it. The
Yeah.
first time I watched it was obviously when it came out because I was excited to watch it, and then
Yeah,
I
and we got
watched it
that
again.
screener. Remember we got the screener. We got
Yeah,
it early and I was like, "Oh."
yeah, yeah. We watched. That's it. That's right. We got the screener, so I had to watch it. And then the second time I watched it was before we did the episode because I wanted to rewatch it. And then
Yeah.
this is the third time I've seen it. And I think I've liked it better every single time I've watched it.
Yeah. Well,
Honestly,
I did the same thing, I think. I think I watched the screener, and then I watched it again when, Jeff did, like, a watch party. We did, like, that, like, tweet along,
yeah,
and that was fun
that's
because
what it
then,
was. That's what it
yeah, I
was because I
think you were
remember we
there,
did that. I
yeah.
was there for that one. Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause I remember you being in there. Yeah, so there was that one, and then I watched it again I think again randomly, like, after that again, and then I watched it now again for this, and you're right, I think I like it more every time, and I think one of the reasons why is because it's like, this I mean, yes, I guess if you character-wise oh, we didn't even go through the things,
oh,
I
I
guess,
gotta, yeah,
but
I'll go
yeah,
through this real quick.
let me pause and go through that first, and then
All
I'll
right,
get to
so
my point on that, yeah.
Hell House LLC Origins of Carmichael Manor came out in 2023. We may have watched it earlier this year, though. I don't know. I can't remember. It's officially listed as 2023.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
directed by Stephen Cognetti again, starring Bridget Rose Perrotta as Margot Bentley. I don't know, Margot. That's all I can think about.
I know, every time I see Margot. Poor Margot's in the
Yeah,
world.
the Christmas Vacation. Destiny Leleni Brown as Rebecca Vickers, James Liddell as Chase Bentley, Gideon Berger as Patrick Carmichael, Victoria Andrunick as Margaret Carmichael, Darren F. Earl as Bradley Moynihan, Sierra Saka as Alice Harper, Celeste Seacon, sorry, antique store
Maybe
clerk.
Chacon, I don't know, yeah.
Chacon, there's
Yeah.
see Brian. Brian saves me every time. Marlene Williams as Eleanor Carmichael, Dana Michelle Kurtz as Linda, Joe Bendelli as Hell House Clown, and Robert Savakinis as Arthur Carmichael. A group of cold case investigators stay at the Carmichael Manor. After 4 nights, the group was never heard from again. What is discovered on their footage is even more disturbing than anything found on the Hell House tapes. So I'll swing it back over to Brian to finish his thoughts on the characters of this one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, even though we gave it just a long list of characters like the other ones, I felt like there was the core characters, other than when they kept flashing back to the different old footage of the Carmichaels. It was Margot, Rebecca, and Chase. Those were the 3 characters. Yes, they had the news people that would come interspersed in there, but you really this time you had like a tight-knit
It
group
was
of 3 people.
minimalist. It went back to the
Yes.
first one, which I mean,
Yep.
even the first one had more characters, to be quite
Yeah.
honest, but it still felt minimalist, and I think that was to the movie's not the opposite of detriment. It was it was to the movie's
Yeah.
betterment
Yeah.
that it was stripped down.
Yeah, and I like the fact that this one kinda went it's interesting. This was his most, I'd say, and this is not it's gonna sound like it's an insult, but it's not. But this is definitely the most generic-y type of found footage, like the formula, in terms of
Hmm.
formula a lot. Of course, but in the faux documentary, angle of it. But I think overall there was way more like traditional found footage elements in this one. So that's what I mean by that. That's why I said generic is a terrible word to use for
Hmm.
that. But what I meant is I like that it went to a lot of like more familiar. Had that's made better, more familiar found footage
The
elements with
I,
that,
and I thought
but
that
in a
it
good way. I thought.
yeah, because this if you look at the scares in this one, I was actually counting the scares in this one compared to like some of the other ones. It's got a great pace to it, and
Mhm.
there's quite a few really good scares. Like the scares that are in this one are really well done.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And
man.
I thought that was one of its biggest strengths is you've got this very minimalistic cast. You've got a great setting. The house that they film this in is just amazing.
Yeah,
You even go outside at certain points, but I just thought that that
and you get
minimalistic,
like the high shots of it too. You get the
yeah.
land. You get a lot of
But
landscape.
this it harkens back to what I thought made the first one so great was that you had characters you care about,
Yep.
very simple. Don't worry about the lore. There is a lot of lore in this one, but it's done much better. It's
Right.
done way better.
You know why? Because you're along with it. You're discovering it as they are, as opposed to being
Exactly.
shoved in your face.
Or yeah,
You
told
know?
on a newsroom green screen.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I love the characters in this because you get the lead girl who's like so like kind of typical, like but like not to a fault. Like you expect her
Oh
to
my!
be that way.
I need to talk to her. I mean, I need to talk about her because
Yeah.
she is so good. This is Bridget Rose Parada
Yeah.
as Margot. I think we all have had those friends that we love them dearly, but they're also a little bit extra.
Yeah.
Like you know what I mean?
I'm
Like they
probably that in our group, but
no,
I'm the
no.
first to admit it. I'm totally extra.
But you know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah.
always that person like they have that one thing that they're like a little
Yeah.
bit extra, but you love them
Yeah.
dearly. You love them to death. And I think that's what Margot is to Rebecca. Like she just knows how she is. I mean, like
Yeah. Well, they
that's
love each
Margot.
other, you know,
They
and
love each other.
that's why they're together. They
Yeah.
love each other, and she accepts her faults, but you know, to a point, realistic point. She's like, "This is the last one I could do with you. You
Yeah.
know, it's not making money. I have a real job." Kind of. It's just it's like real situations that I think everyone could find themselves in. You know, kind
And
of.
the, and I thought like the whole thing with Margot's brother, he was
Chase was
having
awesome. Oh my god, he was one of my
yeah,
favorite characters in the entire franchise. He was
but
so
he was
cool.
having, he's having issues like oh my god, we talked about in Hell House 3 how the guy's arrogance made for an
Yeah,
interesting character quirk that made the character interesting. Here you have entire like family issues that you care
yeah,
about that you're like, oh my god, like I'm
yeah.
invested in this character because I want to find out like what's going to happen to her poor brother, and she really loves her brother and she's trying to help him in her own way, and like what's going on with him, and I mean, and how are they going to get money because like she's screwing up her job on this terrible Zoom call. I mean, there's
Yeah.
a lot of stuff going on here where you start getting really invested in their personal
Yeah.
life, which
And you know what?
is rare.
Yeah, and something you said too with Bridget Rose Parada too. She stays in character the whole thing. Like she's even extra with like that overbearing protection of her brother. Like he's like,
Yeah.
"I'm fine," and she's like, "No, no, no, no. Yeah, I need you here." And it's like she's obviously she embraced that control freak character to
Oh,
perfection,
it was
to the
so
point
good.
of where you act. It's like such a likable quality when you're supposed to like you know, yes, it gets annoying at times, but like intentionally, like perfectly it
I've
annoys you,
always
you know?
I described her when I was thinking about when we were going to talk about this. I said I both love her and hate her at the same time,
Yeah, yeah,
and I think that's got to be one of the most hard things you can pull off as an actor is to be loved
yeah,
and hated at the same time.
yep,
I just
and she
and
does it, yeah. I
I'm
don't think she gets
guessing.
enough credit, honestly. It's like, I never hear enough said about her, how good she is in this,
I
you know?
I like I think she's one of the best characters in the whole series.
Yeah,
Period.
yeah,
Period. Point
yeah.
blank.
I mean, these arguably these 3 might be the
Yeah,
3 of
might
the best
be.
because
Yeah.
Chase is awesome and Rebecca is a great character too because she plays off both so well. She's such a good actress. I wanna see more of Destiny Lilani Brown in, like, other things too because she's so good in this, and she pulls off that freak out like the moment like one of her I think her signature things is like that whole part with the Zoom call she has with her boss or
Yeah.
whoever she's presenting to, just to look on her face, like how she just like had so much with her eyes just widening and closing and what just to do you like it like without her saying anything. And then you have the other one. It's like that. You've all been there sometimes when you've been in like this weird thing, like, are you frozen? I can't tell what's
Yeah.
and the other girl, like, and she just like just her eyes widen and then they get like and then she's confused and what and it's just so well done, that whole sequence. And and like just the way she plays off, it's just like, I don't know, it's like he managed to get, like, the perfect elixir in this of story, everything in there, like, basically, it's like, if the f I mean, I mean, we'll go through our rankings afterwards, but if this could even if this stood alone, this would be one of my favorite movies, like,
Yeah,
it's, like, found footage, it's so well done.
the documentary I just recently watched, I watched a 2.5 hour documentary about Hammer horror. And the reason Hammer became so successful is they figured out that even with cheap sets, because sometimes they would reuse sets for two different movies just to save
Yeah.
money, even with a low budget, if you could hire quality actors, you could you could make a film greater than the sum of its parts, basically. And that's why they got Peter Cushing and they got Christopher Lee and they had these Oliver Reed. I mean, these great, great actors. They got them to be in these movies and they made them so good based on the acting alone. I think if you can get, I think that's what Carmichael Manor did. I think you got these fantastic three actors that just gave these stellar performances
Mm.
and you elevated this. I mean, this movie with three lesser actors would not have been nearly as good. It just
Oh,
wouldn't.
it actually might have been, like it may have, like, totally derailed it, honestly.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's the key strength of this particular movie. Not to say that any of it's bad. Like I thought, again, like we said, I think the lore was parceled out in the right way. I think the story was cool. I think the setting was cool. I think the pacing was good. So there's a lot of other things that had to go right as well. But I think these actors being able to give these performances so convincingly, that I mean, it pushed it almost to the finish line, and maybe that
Yeah.
other stuff got it over the finish line. But I think that did a lot to make this movie one of my favorites. And again,
Yeah.
like I said, the scares are actually really good in this one.
Yeah. Oh my god. They managed to make the clown scarier than ever in this.
And
It's
the first one, the scares were very in the background, and then part two, they were so up front they weren't scary, and in part three, they were in the background for most of the movie, and then the ending made them so up front that they weren't scary. This one I thought was the perfect balance.
yeah, it
You
really
had some
was.
of the background scares, but you had some that were up front, but not too up front. I think the Zoom call one was probably the only one that I felt was maybe a little bit too much at the very end, maybe just a little bit, but minor quibble. I think
Yeah.
overall, I think all the scares in this one were like perfectly balanced between showing too much and showing too little, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
And
yeah,
you got a whole new like lore to the whole that connects there and you took it out and you took it out of the the Abaddon Hotel kind of thing, because it's I guess in this movie it's no longer that the hotel is burned down and
you're right.
it's
Yeah, we found out
right.
the
So
hotel's been burned to the
yeah,
ground,
so you
but
finally find out what they tried to do before Wind took it over. It was burnt down and it's gone now. So it's like, obviously to advance the story now you have to go out of that spot. And
there's
now
a big
granted, it ends
clue.
with yeah, so I'll let you go. Yeah.
No, well, you were about, I guess you were about to say the
Oh,
same thing.
yeah.
It ends with a clue as to where the story's headed, and that
Yes.
is that they're reopening this carnival
Yep.
fair that is happening on these grounds that where these clowns. That's we find out in this movie where these clowns came from. And
Yeah.
when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh! If this next Hell House movie takes place at a carnival,
Yeah.
like if that's not Brian and Tim's cup
Yeah.
of tea, oh my gosh, like that's going to
Yeah.
be incredible. Like Stephen Cognetti just read our minds of where we would take this franchise because that's exactly
Yeah.
where I would go with it.
And even like to the last sequence, like where you see the clown in the window when they mention that, like that was like again like the chef's kiss again. How you literally you're teasing the next thing where it's going to go, yet simultaneously connecting it to everything that you love about this franchise. That he's just like looking in the window and you're like, okay, he's out there in the world now, this clown. He's not just in a basement, he's not just in a house. He's now loose. And that's why I think you're right. I think it has to that next movie is gonna have to be about the fair.
Oh my
And
gosh. That would
and
be
which and
incredible.
them creating that again, and like I could see great sequences with the where there's like a house of mirrors or something. So many things they could do. I just hope he stays the course of this one. Um, and I kind of hope in a weird way that they still have like the characters of this one. I know their fate would tell you they shouldn't be in this one, but they could be. I mean, this movie brings back characters all the time in flashbacks or home movies
Yeah.
or just by them in the afterlife coming in there. It'd be interesting to see. And then, there's definitely some more like, they kind of introduce a little bit new lore in here while still kind of sticking a little bit to the old one. And, it's just, and I even like there has to be a reference, like an homage to the Changeling, right? That little red ball that like,
Yeah.
right? That's
Yeah.
gotta be. I
That's
mean,
that's definitely a changeling
yeah, I
reference.
mean, that's gotta be a thing. So there's even a cool little old school horror reference for the aficionados, that like all the classic horrors. But yeah, just overall, like in this one, like I said, this one kind of is definitely more, even though it has that faux doc thing, it definitely ramps up the more traditional found footage that you get, but like almost like he does it to like perfection. Like he has the perfect balance of this one. So I mean,
Again,
I
it's like
guess
he's learning from every single
yeah,
movies and
like, and that's
tweaking
why.
it.
Yeah, and I think that's why this franchise overall is so loved, because it's like, there's no rule that you can't course correct. Every franchise is going to have its one that's going to be in the end. Granted, sometimes it's not as stark as this one might be, but there's always a kind of a dud movie that someone's going to consider, not up to par the other
But
ones.
but
But
isn't it that great though that when you have a singular vision,
yeah,
you're able to do that kind of course correction? Because if you
yep.
you hand this to other directors, you can have every other director make the same mistakes
Yeah.
in your
Which is the
franchise.
biggest Yeah, and that's the biggest criticism with the sequel to Star Wars, is like you basically didn't have a cohesive plan, and then you gave it to another director who totally did that, and then you had to, bring J.J. Abrams back to kind of fix what everyone didn't like about the second one, rather than just because they kind of put him in a hole. If they just would have had the whole thing
Yeah,
and like lined up. I don't know why they did it that way. I don't know why, because the originals weren't done that way.
I
Yes, they had
don't
different directors, but it would have one consistent
I don't know
writer
how.
through it, and
Yeah,
yeah.
not to get on a Star Wars tangent, but
Yeah, I know,
the
yeah.
fact that they decided we're going to do a trilogy and they didn't map it out beforehand just completely boggles my mind. Like why
Yeah, it
did
really does.
like like how Disney could ever even think that was a good idea? I just can't imagine. But anyway,
Now, granted, I'm much more accepting of the Star Wars
yeah,
than Tim, but with
yeah,
that, but yeah, we're not gonna go into
no.
that thing. But I guess probably at this point, probably good to go. Like, because I mean, if we keep going, we'll talk about this movie for another
And
hour,
like I
so
said,
we
we
might
got
as
a
well
whole
just.
episode on this movie, so we're
Yeah, so
just
we
repeating
can
ourselves at this
you
point.
can go back to
Yeah.
compare it. So I think, yeah, let's do our rankings now.
Oh, so I didn't write mine in our spreadsheet. So Brian and I are
Yeah,
working off like a rundown sheet, but there's no surprise that our rankings are
yeah,
exactly the same.
yeah,
I guess we'll start at the bottom. So Brian and I both
yeah,
agreed Hell House
yeah,
LLC 2, the Abaddon Hotel, is by far the worst of the series.
yeah.
I don't think there's any question. I mean,
Mm,
you can look on the Shutter comments. Everybody agrees with us
yeah.
in
I
terms of
think
the rating.
everyone would rank it this way, honestly.
Honestly, I do.
But
I think they
yeah,
would. So we put
yeah,
Hell House LLC 2 on the bottom. It was too far in the direction of doing everything wrong that made the first one great. You
right.
basically did the opposite. Coming to number three was Hell House
Three.
LLC 3, Lake of
Yeah,
Fire.
yeah,
Three for three because again, definitely big improvement over part two, but not as good as the other two that we're getting ready to get to. But still not bad. I mean, this one
yeah.
again, pleasant surprise was very pleasantly surprised. Is definitely watchable. Um, I quite enjoyed the rewatch of part three.
Yeah, I did too. And I'm gonna buy that set that's out, even though there's another one coming out. But that umbrella set, it's like $100, but it's got a full like hardcover book in there,
Oh,
and it's got all
cool.
four movies. I think it's yeah, I think it's like I may actually order it sooner than later, because like one of the other things I want to buy, like the Late Night with the Devil one, sold out. I don't think there's a limited number on them, so they may reprint more. But like the special edition of this Hell House one looks fantastic. It's like a great set. It's got like all the movies, the behind the scenes stuff, some merch with it and stuff. It looks really
Oh,
cool.
cool.
Yeah, it's on the
Um,
Umbrella site. So, but yeah, I think 2 is going to be obvious too,
yeah,
right? I
two
mean,
obviously is the Carmichael Manor. I will
yeah,
say, I had I kind of pulled a Brian here. So Brian always says, "Yeah, I'm going to put the original in the number one spot, and it has to lose it. Like
yeah,
it's going to stay in the number one spot unless you give me a reason otherwise." I kind of did the same thing here because on paper, part of Hell House LLC
Mhm.
Origins Carmichael Manor to me actually has more scares than the first movie.
It
Uh,
does. It does.
it has more scares. It has better scares than the first film, and I honestly probably like the characters more in Carmichael Manor. But
Yeah,
saying that, I mean, on paper, you would probably say then you should have ranked that number one. But saying that, I kind of pulled a Brian. I feel like Hell House LLC was so good for its time in establishing this franchise that I could not move it out of that number one spot. Even
yeah,
though on paper, I probably liked Carmichael Manor. It's hard for me to say I liked it more because I saw it at a different time,
yeah.
but I liked it equally as good. And I thought there was a lot of things it did better than the first film.
Yeah, and I agree, and I that's the thing, it's like, I just couldn't I feel like it would be almost like, I mean, for lack of a better word, disrespectful to knock
Yeah,
the original out of the number 1
yeah,
spot because it,
yeah.
like, you wouldn't have Carmichael Manor if that one wasn't there.
Exactly. Yeah, it's hard.
So,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
like I
it's
did, you're right, that from the time period, from what the things that they did with it, the establishing of this whole franchise, it 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 didn't deserve to lose it. It didn't do anything that it made it lose its spot. That's the thing. It
yeah.
didn't do anything wrong. So that's why it's gonna stay there. Like, but like I've been saying, like if I ranked it like out of, and this sounds weird to say, if I ranked it out of the franchise, Carmichael might be number one.
That's
You
exactly how
know?
I felt. It
Yeah.
actually might be my number one. You know what it reminds me of? It's like if you had I can't think of a specific example right off the top of my head, but if you had like a singer, like an old singer from like the 60s or whatever, and then you had somebody at this time period that they I'll give you maybe this is kind of an example, maybe not 100% spot on. So I like Chris Isaac. Chris Isaac singer. He did Wicked Game was one of his big
Oh, I
hits.
love, yeah, Chris
Chris
Isaac's
I love
amazing.
Chris Isaac. Well, one of Chris Isaac's like absolute idols was Roy Orbison. Of course, is obviously a very famous, very classic singer. So to me, it's kind of like if Roy Orbison was Hell House LLC and Chris Isaac is the Carmichael Manor, because if I'm gonna listen to something, I'm gonna listen to Chris Isaac before I listen to Roy Orbison. But I'm not gonna say Chris Isaac's better than Roy Orbison because Chris Isaac wouldn't be Chris Isaac without Roy Orbison coming before him.
Man, damn, that is an insanely good analogy. We are like a full analogy game. We're making analogies already. We're a pretty good team. Yeah, no, that one is like that is the perfect analogy for that moment. It's like,
Am I
yes,
right? Because
no,
like,
it's exactly right. Exactly the way to explain that because it is like I could see myself over the time watching Carmichael Manor way more than I would the original, but just for whatever reason, like that, like it's just. But it wouldn't exist without the first one. So it deserves its respect to be ranked where it is. Like it doesn't.
and I bet you that's the only time you're ever going to hear Roy Orbison mentioned in a Hell House LLC podcast. So
Right, I guarantee you it might
again,
be the only one, unless the
again,
next one is called Hell House LLC, the Orbison tapes. It could
so
just be
again,
a
once again, Civil War
bizarre movie.
brings you the most random
Yeah, that was
tangents
gonna be.
whatsoever. But anyway,
Watch
uh,
Cognetti listening. He goes, "That's what was missing from the Fire franchise, Roy Orbison." Yeah, you know what? And now I'm thinking of
damn
Grease
it!
2, and he goes, "We need those Roy Orbison records." I'm like, oh god, now we got to Grease 2, but that's okay because Darcy the Mail Girl loves Grease too. She always brings it into things too, so that's okay.
There you
That's
go.
perfectly
There you go.
acceptable on a horror podcast.
Oh
But
my gosh. So
only
anyway,
us though that could bring it all in. Roy Orbison and Grease 2 in one thing.
oh my
That's a
god.
feat. That's a feat
Yeah,
of strength.
yeah.
Yeah.
Only leave it to us. But anyway,
Yes.
so I hope you guys enjoyed that part two
Yes.
retrospective. Yeah, again, Hell House LLC still one of my favorite franchises, even though I had that one little
Oh,
dud there in the middle. I
easily.
mean, I
Yes.
think three out of four ain't bad. 3 out of 4 ain't
No.
bad. And
Almost Meatloaf song.
I think,
Yeah.
yeah. I think the maybe the best is yet to come for this franchise.
Yeah.
I'm hoping.
Yeah. I can't. I'm very looking for, and it's like, isn't it like next year, right? Or is it this year? Oh no, the VHS one is this year.
VHS
The
is
Hell
this
House, I
year.
think, is next year coming out. We
Yeah.
forgot to mention real quick. After somewhere, I don't know if it's after 2 or after 3, but there was the rumor of the Hell House TV series that was supposed to come out that never saw fruition, and I'm wondering if the Carmichael Manor was basically took some piece of that. Again, we need to talk
We need to talk to
to
Stephen
Cog
Cognetti. Get his agent on the
Cognetti.
phone. We have
Yeah, I almost said
questions.
Seymour Scagnetti. I went a little Tarantino in there for a second. Yeah, I need we need to get need to figure that we need to get Stephen Cognetti on here. We have lots of questions for him. I'm gonna work on that. I'm gonna work on that.
Yeah,
See if
I'll
we
leave
can
it to
get him
Brian.
on because
He's our PR guy.
yeah,
He makes the magic happen there
gotta
with the interviews.
yeah. Oh, by the way, the Alexander Heller Nicholas is the one that does the book in Hell House. Forgot to say.
Oh,
I forgot to
nice. There
mention
you
that
go.
part. So it's
Our
film
saucy little
historian, the
minx.
connection to
Yeah.
Civil War, everything. Okay.
Yeah. All right,
So
guys. So we're not going to tell you what our next franchise is. We'll put some clues out on Twitter
yeah.
beforehand. But I hope you guys enjoyed this second part of the Hell House retrospective, and we have 2 more franchises to go for our summer Slaycation.
Yes.
We'll also have our dismemberments. Again, send us
300th
feedback on
episode in there. Oof, lots of
300th
stuff.
episode. Lots of stuff coming. Again, if you have any feedback on our idea that we mentioned last episode of improving our dismemberments, drop us a line at our civilgorepodcast@gmail.com address, and we will see you here shortly for our next installment. Take care.
Yeah.